11 minutes past the top of the hour. Time for us to embark on our second conversation this Monday morning. Our focus being on World Environment Day, just to track the gains that have been made so far, as well as explore some of the challenges and the loopholes that still exist when it comes to the conservation of our environment. My guest is already here, Felix Kimani, who is a project director at Lavington Rotary Club. He'll be helping us unpack this conversation all together. Karibu sana to the program.
Asante sana, nashukuru.
Asante.
Yes.
All right, before we get to the whole aspect of environment, let's just start by first understanding the Rotary Eco Festival. Will be happening between the 3rd and 5th in culmination towards the World Environment Day.
Correct.
Talk to us a bit about that.
Lavington Eco Rotary Club is all about sensitizing basically the population on environmental matters. We saw Corona really affected a lot of people, and this also had environmental connotation to it because there's something called pretty much the disease jumping from animals to now humans. It's important to take care of our environment. As a country, as a whole, we do have policies that kind of take care of that, but on a personal level, it's something that we need to continue sensitizing the population about, because we still see people dropping papers here and there. We do see people when they're done with something, they just throw it anywhere. And this does affect our environment on many levels. We have organizations who are part of us as Rotary, like the We Center, who pretty much focus so much on recycling of things that are electrical and electronics. Each and every single house, you'll find at least there's maybe 3 or 4 phones, and after that is done, because they do have an expiration rate, you find that people just toss it, and eventually it ends up in a landfill. And in the landfill, all the chemicals that are comprising of the cell phone itself, they do seep into the soil, and when the rains come, these do go to the rivers, and you find the fruits that you buy, the vegetables that you buy, eventually you find that the rivers that are polluted, the water from it is what is being used to be able to grow this. We've seen cancer on the rise. There's a reason behind that. So taking care of our environment is something that is critical, something that needs to be looked into, something that we need to be sensitized enough from an early age growing up. Because the habits that we do have, basically throwing things around, is something that we saw as growing up, became part of our mindset, and so we don't see anything wrong against that. There's definitely an element of enforcement that pretty much needs to also come in. For example, I can give you a good example. Lavington Eco Rotary Club has been cleaning the Kericho River. This is in partnership with UNEP and also NMS. And also we do have other organizations pretty much supporting in the effort. And we've been working with the community around Kawangware, Gatina, and also a couple of primary schools, like Kawangware, Gatina, also primary school. And if you do go to those schools, you'll see the efforts that we have towards sensitizing a younger population towards the same. All right, I hear you. Now, you have been in this for 2 years, if I can say, because this is going to be the 2nd annual event of this festival. I just want you to talk to us about the kind of activities that will be going on there when it comes to particularly creating awareness as it pertains to conserving our environment. Some of the activities that will be present will be like art in the park, whereby we have children taking part in drawing in the park. We do have Mr. Sketch. He was there in the last one we had, which was in the year 2020. 2021, we were affected by Corona. And so we have fun ways to engage children. We have fun ways to engage adult population on the same. We'll have some nature walks. We'll have food courts present, whereby those that do come will be taught ways and foods they can eat to be able to take care of certain kind of diseases which are affecting them, like type 2 diabetes. Because it's interesting enough that most of our population don't know that there's a certain, if you eat a certain set of foods, you are able to reverse a certain kind of disease. And so this kind of awareness will be present there. Also, we'll have teams, we'll have people who will teach on how to work with to recycle things, around their own spaces. We do have people like fun kids who've been taking care of that recycling aspect, creating furniture using recycled materials. So we're going to have a lot of activities. There's going to be movie in the park. There's going to be music in the park. We'll have Ghetto Classics. Last time we had Ghetto Classics. And Ghetto Classics, this is a group of young men and women also from different informal settlements. They started off from Korogosho, and basically the kind of music they play will wow you. And this emphasizes that we've been working with the youth towards working with them to be able to sensitize the population around the same.
All right, so clearly there's going to be a lot of activities taking place.
Yes.
Now, you just mentioned something, and I want us to explore it a bit, that there's actually some foods that you can eat which can reverse certain diseases, but it's a chain. In terms of this food you can eat for better health and for better environment. How does this boil down to the environment in terms of what I eat for my health?
What you eat does affect your health. There's no question about it.
Yes.
What happens also is we've been having a lack of linkage between what you eat and agriculture you practice. And so we have an organization which is part of Lavington Eco. It's called Gordon. And they've been working also with the Ministry of Education in trying to redesign the curriculum around agriculture in such a way it provides a linkage to the nutrition aspect.
Right.
From an early age, if you're taught if you eat this, then this will be the result, or if you have this kind of disease, you can be able to be prescribed by a dietitian, nutritionist, a doctor, this kind of food, eat this number of days, and then this will reverse this, against taking medicine on a similar manner as a prescription. And this is also pretty much cheaper for the population, because you see, like type 2 diabetes, it's kind of costly to many people.
Yeah.
So these are just some of the things that will be featured, educational aspect, during that event. So it's interesting that, yes, we are an agriculture country, but we do, the linkage between what you eat and what is grown, there's a lack of linkage there. So during the EcoFest, there'll be that booth that will pretty much walk people through that whole session. Yes.
Well said, well said. Now, Felix, 1974 is when we actually had the first event for the World Environment Day. When you track down, this is like, what, 48 years later? From your perspective as someone who's really so much has hat on matters of environment, what would you say are some of the gains that we've made as a globe, and then narrowing it down to us as Kenyans in terms of conserving our environment?
One thing I'm grateful about our government is we're on top of that.
All right.
The reason I say we're on top of that compared to so many other countries in Africa and also across the globe, we were the first country to be able to effectively ban plastic, which is commendable. It's truly commendable. We are the only country that has a national park within a city. That shows how much we as a government are conscious about that effort. The appointment of Our Excellency into the Committee of African Heads on Environmental Matters, that is President Uhuru Kenyatta, the other day when it was from South Africa to Kenya, you know, the seat was pushed. Yeah. It shows how much as a government we are ahead in terms of those matters. Right now, Rotary Club itself, we have something called the Million Tree Campaign. That is plant 1 million trees towards what the government effort is 10% of our land should be covered by trees. There are many ways this can be tackled from personal level. We all eat fruits, but we need to be conscious that the fruit that you eat has a seed, and the seed that you have can be planted somewhere. It's interesting to know that a tree takes about 40 to 50 years to absorb at least 21 kilograms of carbon. Right now, as a world, also as a country, pretty much because you're part of it, we're trying to come back to zero carbon, which means absorb as much carbon from the air as possible and put that carbon back into the soil. So which means whatever oxygen we are consuming at the moment is because of a tree that was planted 40 or 50 years ago. And considering that the population is about heading to close to 9-10 billion. There's a dangerous aspect if we do fail to plant trees right now. Rotary Club has a million tree, as I said, campaign whereby we do partner with schools, communities to plant trees. And we have trees that we are availing for free. There's no cost to it. Because some people say as a Rotary Club. So it is, in every single locality, every single region, every single county, you'll find there's a Rotary Club. So it's easy for churches to reach out, to partner in that effort, and this will help in what we call carbon sequestration, which is absorbing the carbon and putting it back into the soil. We need to green as much as possible.
So clearly, at least there's some gains we've made as a globe and even entirely as a country. You mentioned the 10%, and again, also this reminds me that when we were celebrating the World Forest Day in March of 21st, there was still again that conversation of we want to plant at least of 10%. Is it by the next year, and one would wonder, what is this conversation surrounding 10%, so to speak, when it comes to planting our trees and the forest cover? And also that's what I want you to just talk to us about. Remember that you're just trying to navigate the whole aspect of the World Environment Day, and my guest is here talking to us, that is Felix Kimani, just talking to us about matters environment. Since this day was first celebrated as a globe in 1974, we're looking at 48 years later. How far have we reached in terms of conserving our environment? This is as an entire globe, and even just narrowing down to our country as Kenyans. Do we even understand the importance of protecting and conserving our environment? We keep talking about our forests, that we need to ensure that we take care of that. We need to plant trees, but oftentimes you would see us just do that when we are about to celebrate that day. For instance, when you're talking about the World Water Day or the World Forest Day, that is when we're planting these trees. But just going by what Felix is telling us, it's clearly important for us to do that. We're talking about us banning plastic bags, as he's mentioned, but you would agree that you wouldn't just be walking on the streets and you wouldn't miss particularly traders, and mostly the small and even the medium-scale traders, selling us items on this plastic bag. So clearly, what are some of the missing links? Even when it comes to this, we know that as a country, we banned that in 2017. Other African countries, in fact, over 30 African countries, including South Africa, Rwanda, have also banned plastic bags. But what exactly is the implication of that? Did we even understand the importance of that in the first place for us to even get to a point where 5 years later, we are still using that? He's just talked about the issue of throwing litter around. Do you understand as a Kenyan how that might affect you and I in the near future, particularly when it comes to conserving our environment? So this is just what we are trying to navigate, even as we prepare for the World Environment Day, which is coming up on the 5th of June. In fact, just like around 3 weeks to then. That is just what we are trying to see. Yes, talked about those gains. We'll also explore the failures as a country and even as a globe, exactly what we need to do to perhaps bridge that gap, because at the end of the day, a good environment for you and I is a better living place for you and I. So Felix, just before we try to work on your mic, we're talking about that 10% forest cover, and what I was trying to understand is that a good number of Kenyans might wonder, particularly even me, why are we talking about the 10%? Why can't we make it 20%, 30%? I mean, we understand how important trees are. You've just told us of how it takes long, for them to even grow to that maturity, to a point whereby it can benefit you and I. So why are we talking about 10% forest cover?
At the moment, we have to be realistic.
All right.
We have a culture that is not conscious of that. And baby steps are always important when you want to achieve something. So 10% is something that is just a number that was put, that was more applicable, more sensible in terms of being able to measure up to that. So definitely there's going to be an increase of the 10%. We challenge ourselves further. It's like building your muscles. You start small.
All right.
So you just don't go big. First you start small, and then you kind of build upon it. You perfect the whole system of it. Once you perfect it, scaling is easier. So it's an issue of just perfecting how it, the whole ecosystem, how to go about it, and then just scaling it. So definitely it's going to be beyond 10%. There's no question. In fact, I'm confident we will go beyond the 10%. Even though the 10% is the target, I am more confident we will achieve much more than that. Yeah. So
now let's just say we are working with what is realistic to also ensure that we try and reach and meet those targets that we are setting up. Now we're talking about even the trees and forest cover, and we know we have the natural and man-made. Is there one that is important than the other?
It's always good to work with indigenous trees.
Yeah.
There's a reason as to why they grew there naturally. If you go to the dry areas, semi-arid areas, go Kajiado, you go Marsabit up north, you find that there's a certain kind of trees that basically are good for that environment. If you go to the central, the same thing. You go to the coast down, the same thing. The mangroves, they do well where there's a water, salty water cover. So trees do have that aspect of they grow better in certain conditions.
Okay.
So definitely indigenous trees is what, as a Rotary Club, we are shooting, advocating for. And as I said, they are free, they are available through the Rotary clubs in your own communities.
These are the indigenous trees?
That's what's available at the moment for free through the Rotary office. So we are looking for as many people as possible to be conscious of the same and also to participate in the same. The goal is to be able to reduce the carbon footprint per person. An individual, usually an average person, is about 46 kilograms of carbon footprint in a month. And if you look at the whole aspect of one tree takes 40 to 50 years to absorb 21 kilograms of carbon, then we have a lot to do to just get up to the 9, projected, billion population in the world. So, so in terms of trees, we do advocate for indigenous trees because they are good for that locality. There are some trees that definitely the man-made pretty much just talks about that it wasn't there originally. That's what we're looking at. Yeah, that's what you're.
So what's the difference therein?
There's no difference there because first it wasn't there. If you go, we can go plant trees in Kajiado. You know what I mean? Where maybe a certain tree would do better, but we are not conscious of it. That's a man-made forest. So it's just an issue of was it there originally, was it not there originally? And what you're shooting is to green as much as possible. And that's why you see things like the vertical gardening coming up, hydroponics. These are critical to absorbing of carbon from the air. I know people look at it from the aesthetic aspect of it, but there's a consequential issue about it, and that is absorbing as much as possible. So like the garden gardens that are being advocated, and that's why we as a club also, we are happy about the 4K club, being revamped in the schools, because that aspect of growing, that aspect of nurturing, that aspect of greening is something that is critical at the moment. We're in the decade of climate action. As far as we are concerned, the focus at the moment is all about sustainable cities, as far as the UN is concerned, as far as the whole agenda is concerned. And you find that the whole 17 sustainable goals, it will not be possible until we focus on the aspect of greening. I know the banks are pretty much also getting into that space through what they call the carbon credit. And the carbon credit has to do with how much carbon dioxide is absorbed, and then how much can be bought from there, and then also whatever fund comes out of that to be able to kind of build upon in the sustainable communities, kind of create them. So as far as that is concerned, a lot needs to be done towards sensitization of the corporate organizations, and so we are looking also for the EcoFest to have as many organizations, as many companies that are conscious of the same, and also pretty much want to showcase their efforts in the same space of reducing carbon through gaining carbon credit. They can come and also sponsor the event, and also there will be so many other participants in that event that have already signed up, like Coco Network. They deal with bioethanol energy. And as a country, we are agriculture inclined. I mean, we're looking at 33% of our GDP is agriculture. So we have a lot of waste in terms of which can be turned into fuel and which is cheaper to be used. We saw the rise in fuel and all that. In America, a certain percentage of the petroleum has to have ethanol. And that's in the US, that's in the West. So definitely at some point, this will be something to look into towards reducing the emission of carbon.
To our environment.
To our environment. So those are some of the education aspects that you will find present there. How can I as a person reduce my carbon footprint? Yes, I'm producing 46 in a month. How can I reduce it? Turning off the lights is important. If you're not using the lights, just turn it off. Because there's a ripple effect to CO2 back into the air because of that. 60% of our land is used for grazing, livestock, that is. And so that basically is more carbon into the air because they graze, they reduce in terms of carbon being absorbed back into the soil. And so we also advocate for plant-based diets, which not only good for you as an individual for your own health, but also good for the environment because it absorbs the carbon. So all these education aspects will be present.
I hear you. So when it comes to that bit of hydroponics or even greenhouse, it's not just a question of being sophisticated, it's actually because there's a very good benefit it has to our environment. And yes, you talked about the CO2 when it comes to the trees and us having, so many of them. But I also just want you to break it down for us further. Maybe when we understand the importance of having trees in our environment, we will see now the need not to cut them and the need to continuously plant them, not just when it's World Forest Day or World Water Day, but actually making it a culture and a practice to do so.
Yeah, definitely there's need for that, for it to become, and that's why I said it's commendable that 4K Club came back into the space, the school space, to sensitize from an early age that you need to grow something, learn how to grow something. To the kids, you know, it may seem just something in the curriculum that has to be done, but it's a habit you're building inside of them. As I said, Gordon, for example, is also working with the Ministry of Education towards curriculum development in the TVET space towards the same, in such a way they show a linkage between agriculture and your health. That's important. And also, this is supposed to be scaled down to what we call also the Gordon Eco Clubs. As I said initially, as Lavington Eco Rotary Club, we've been working with school. Kawangware Primary is a good example, which can be visited. In fact, during the UNEP 50th anniversary, the Deputy Secretary General, that is Amina, Her Excellency Amina, she came to see the work we were doing on the ground, and she was impressed by the model. The model is working with the community, and that's what Rotary clubs do. We work with the community to help them have a more sustainable environment for themselves. So at the school you find nurseries. We do teach children how to create their own nurseries, which they can be able to translate back at home. Because what they learn, they can do it at home. They can also be the champions in their own communities. But when we start at an early age, that's why I say it's commendable for 4K Club to be in the space, in school space, because what they learn, they do translate later on. It becomes a habit. Teach a child what they do. When they're of age, they never depart from it. Same story.
It applies also there.
Yes.
Now, there's this challenge, and it makes a lot of sense with the starting to teach our kids as early as young, when they're still toddlers in school. And yes, we talked about the 4K Club and all of that. But what happens to these adults? I mean, we've seen that culture, and you mentioned it a bit when you're beginning our conversation. You are done with your candy sweet, you just throw it somewhere as you're passing. You're done with your soda bottle, and sometimes even the recycle bins are there. So in this aspect, yes, children can learn as they grow up, and it's something very good, but already the adult population, what do we do in respect to that? Because yes, we talked about those gains made so far, but we cannot shy away from the challenges that still exist when it comes to conserving our environment.
That is true. Banning of plastics was a success, right? And we're talking of adults. So which means it's possible. Because at the end of the day, we all want to live.
Was it really a success?
I can say it's a success.
To a great extent?
To a great extent.
All right.
Because there was a time plastic was normal to find it anywhere, even outside your own house. It was normal. Now it's getting to almost impossible. There's a small percentage that still uses, but it's just to walk around. Much of the work that I do is in the field. Yes. So I do see that.
So you know, you're better placed.
I do see that. Yeah, I do see that. Now, when we come to informal settlements, that's where there's a challenge.
Okay.
That's where there's a challenge, because there's a lack of structure towards addressing that. Question is, what will they do with the plastics they do have? And also we have plastic that has accumulated over the years. And also we do have the financial aspect of it. That is, good example, Kericho River, which we've been working on. It's sad that we do find such still present there, but it's an issue of having the Jirani Kumi working together to enforce, because we also have they're called the Mau Mau community-based organization in Kawangware that we've been working with towards sensitizing the population to work against that. Because when we were cleaning Kericho River, it was a shocker initially. It was like, whoa, we could even find basically waste from hospitals in the river. It was sad. And this is the same water that will grow the skumawiki that will go buy somewhere else. Even
the marine life.
Exactly. So to a greater extent, to a greater percentage, it's been a great success. There's no doubt about it. But we have isolated cases whereby enforcement needs to be kind of looked into, because it's an issue of enforcing now. But as far as the success of it, because, you know, we have a very educated adult population. We do have a very educated population across Africa. We have Egypt, you have South Africa, Kenya comes close, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So my point is, we all want a better life. If you look at what people eat right now, people are more conscious of what they eat now than what they used to eat. I mean, back in the day.
So there's a bit of more awareness in respect to that.
Exactly.
All right.
So the success towards dealing with the adult is something that will kick in. The more we kind of advocate the same, the more there's enforcement towards the same. That's not a challenge, because we all want a better life. We all want to live long. Nobody wants to spend their money on hospital bills.
On something they could have
avoided. That's it.
So it just means that perhaps even when it comes to the adult population, is more of having this conversation more often.
Yes.
Let's stick with that plastic issues just a bit. We banned that as a country in 2017. At least as we speak, over 30 countries in the African continent have done that. Speak of the likes of Tunisia, South Africa, and the likes. And yes, you talked about the informal settlement as also one of the areas that can pose a challenge. But what exactly is the missing link? Because just as I mentioned, I mean, you would go to even estates, and this oftentimes the small and the medium scale traders would sell you items or even goods on some of these plastic bags. And there was a time we had that there was a time whereby the country, and actually most of these traders, were importing it from our neighbors. So what exactly can we do to ensure that there is none of that completely? We already know how hazardous it is to our environment.
It all has to do with enforcement.
Okay.
It all boils down to enforcement. The reason I say enforcement is because as adults, we are conscious. For example, when I'm driving on the road, and there's no policeman at a junction, we'll find that everybody's kind of want to be the one to move. But you find a policeman, what happens? Everybody's they do follow what's supposed to be done.
So it's a question of enforcement.
It's a question of, is there a painful aspect that will kick in after I do this? So enforcement is the issue. I lived in the US for 17 years, and it was interesting to see that people are more conscious of what they drop. Extremely conscious, because there are penalties.
The law is there.
Exactly.
And it works.
It works.
All right.
It works. There are penalties if you're seen doing that. So it's an issue of enforcement. We do have the structures that can do that. It's an issue of now that taking place.
All right.
Yes.
Makes a lot of sense. So again, it just boils down to how we can see, how we can be able to enforce and make it a rule and a law that actually is working and applicable. Felix, as we wind down this conversation, I'd want you to just talk to us about urbanization. We're seeing a lot of migration in terms of leaving the rural areas, coming to urban centers. They say that this is a place where there's a lot of opportunities. And you're talking about a population of 8 billion as we speak. By 2050, we'll be talking of 10 or even 11 or even more when it comes to that population. And there's nothing that governments can do when it comes to expanding land masses. It is as is. So what can they do to balance the population with the environment for the betterment of our environment as we wind down, Felix?
Interesting. This all goes back to socioeconomic issues. Everybody wants a better life.
Yes.
And because everybody wants a better life, they look for it wherever it is. That's why still people
doesn't matter even if it's the urban
wherever it is, wherever it is. So devolution helped to a certain extent to devolve some aspects of the government. Perfection is needed. There's no question about it. At the moment, we do have what Honorable Musheru is rolling out as the national food, it's called what? It's a plan for the national government towards digital economy for different 1450 words. It's a master plan, sorry, it's a master plan. Now, the master plan is supposed to be able to ensure that there's equity of access to things like the internet. There's equity of access to education. There's democratization of education as an aspect of it. Everybody's looking for a better life. So it's an issue of whatever we have at the national government being devolved down to the mashinani. So all these economic viabilities are possible if there's connectivity. Connectivity is a lacking aspect. The road network is helping a lot. There are places that have really grown as a result of that. So it's an issue of now. Technology is something that you cannot take away from basically the next economy or the current economy. And so the kind of digital master plan that is rolling out for the hubs will enable that.
Okay.
Yes.
So it just means there's also there's need to do more than we are if we are to protect our environment at the end of the day.
Yes, yes, yes.
Well, a good place to end this conversation, Felix. Quite informative on matters about our environment. Thank you so much for your time.
Most welcome.
And I have been speaking to Felix Kimani, who is the project director at Lavington Eco Rotary Club, obviously talking to us about matters environment. This is in preparation for the World Environment Day coming up on the 5th of June. And again, this is just where we bring the entire show to a close this Monday morning. Thank you so much for watching from me and on behalf of the entire team that made the show a success. Asante sana. Till tomorrow, have a good morning.